Ericka Young is a best selling author, financial wellness and equity educator, and podcast host of For Better and Worth. She's now on a mission to help people take care of their bag. Ericka shares some sage money tips to make sure you're prepared if and when you walk away from a hostile workplace.
You have really dedicated your life to helping people be financially fiscal. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, talking about finances, it's so difficult. No one wants to talk about how much money they make, how much maybe somebody else is making more than them, or when they find out, how do I go and get my money? How do I fight for it? There's so many issues surrounding money. We don't talk about it with our kids maybe enough. We try to hide and shield how much money we make. We pretend as if, we have it all. And our kids think money grows literally from trees. Like, Ian goes, just use your card. I'm like, well, honey, we only use the card that has the money in the account.
Right.
If we don't have it, we're not using it. But kids don't understand because they are now growing up in a world where it's just use a card, but they don't understand sometimes the connection between it unless we really teach them. How did you get involved in money management? What is your own personal story?
Well, I did what everybody else did. I went to college to get the degree to get
Uh-huh.
a better paying job. And that's what we're taught to do. And while that's
Right.
fine, going to college landed me in some student loan debt. Going to
Hmm.
college taught me how to get the credit card. um
I
because
remember.
right. So I was getting the credit cards. I had more than one. And then of course, you need transportation. And I did what I would call stupid tax when I look back on it. And I got a car while I was in college over the summer when I had this summer job, thinking, oh, it's great. I'm going to be able to do, pay this. And it strapped me for a while. And so when I came out of college, I had all this debt. And so while I was an engineer, it wasn't a whole lot of extra after I paid
Extra.
all the bills and all of that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. And I
Hmm.
think that lack of wiggle room is what had me say I need to do something here. My husband and I thankfully were on the same page, and we both had debt. And so we
Hmm.
figured out how to do this together and to get out together. But really the key was understanding what budgeting and tracking the spending looks
Hmm.
like, and how to make decisions when you do see numbers that are not favorable, and then sticking with those decisions so that you can, for the long haul, get out of debt. It took us 5 years to get out of over $90,000 in debt. And that
90,000.
was
Wow.
Yes, and that was just being consistent even when we
Mhm.
fell off the wagon. It's not like we did everything perfect for 5 years. It was that we learned how to weather life, get back on the wagon, and make sure that we were doing the necessary steps to get free. And so that was the first step into doing that type of work. And I'm an engineer by trade, so I really like numbers, and I know everybody doesn't, but it just
Mhm.
fascinated me to be using numbers in a different way.
Wow. How did you and your husband have that conversation? Like, was it one night over dinner? I did a story with a woman who is now a financial advisor, if you will, and she also wrote a book about money. And I think it's called How Girls Just Want to Have Funds,
Yeah.
FUNDS, but the S being, a
Mhm.
dollar sign. And she talks about there was a night where she and her husband wanted to order a pizza,
Mhm.
and they realized they did not have enough money in the bank. And
Yeah.
that moment, she said, shook her up. She said, wait
Mhm.
a minute, we make good money, but we were literally living paycheck to paycheck, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And, Peter doesn't really have it either. And Peter was like, don't come to me, I don't have any money.
Mhm.
But she said that was a moment for her where she said, if we can't even afford, a large pizza and we're scraping money, there's a problem. And so
Yeah.
she said, she sat down with her husband and said, we need to have a very serious conversation and we have to get ourselves out of this, or we're not going to live and thrive, not only financially, but emotionally and physically, because when you don't have money, that affects your health.
Right, right. Or if you don't know how to
Stress.
manage money
If you
well,
don't have a manager, right?
and it
Absolutely.
stresses
Yeah.
you out. But we had, I would say, 3 critical points. One
Hmm.
was we both came from single parent households, and we just had this revelation that if we can tackle the number one factor in why people divorce, which is
Hmm.
financial fights, money fights,
Right.
then we will be a little bit ahead of the game, right? So we just wanted to
Hmm.
ensure that we had at least a fighting chance to make sure that our relationship lasted. So we noticed that ahead of time. We didn't know how, we didn't know why, we didn't know when. You know what I mean? We just
Mm-hmm.
kind of knew that that was important. And then we had a moment like that as well. I was an engineer, just charging my lunches on a credit card so that I didn't have to have a conversation with him about
Mm.
me having $12 lunch here or $10 here or 15. And there are things that we believe we deserve or we work hard for and we should be
It's
able
true.
to do.
Right.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
was doing this behind his back, and
Mm.
I would say intentionally and also not I didn't think it was a big deal,
Right.
but I wasn't also saying anything, right? And so
Mm.
we started
Kind
talking
of
about
lying by omission, if you will.
that part, that right there. And so we
Mm-hmm.
basically, when we were looking at getting out of debt, we were like, okay, well, we have to stop debting. And that's
Hmm.
when we were looking at the credit cards, and he was like, well, hold on, this is going up. And it
I was like,
wasn't
wait a minute.
it wasn't tons of money, but it was enough. Just think about that. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're doing $10 a day,
It adds up.
in a month, that's over $300 when you're going to work. And so these are things that you can't continue to do if you're really trying to get free. And then the third thing that occurred was more than a year after that incident is when we had our daughter,
Hmm.
and one of our cars broke down, and the repair was $1,000.
Hmm.
And we did not have $1,000. We did not even have room on credit cards for
Wow.
$1,000 emergency of that nature to get me to and from work. However, our credit was decent, so we could go get
Okay.
a vehicle
Then okay. Hmm.
and actually have payments. And then when new money came in, right, a new paycheck came in, we could afford $260, but we could not afford $1,000 repair. And so that was also a telling moment. We were like, you know what? This is
Interesting.
ridiculous. We're professionals. I'm an engineer. This is crazy. There should be no reason why I can't afford to get my car fixed. And we went for 2 months on one vehicle, just trying to figure this out and understand what in the world was going on and if we were going to get another vehicle. And we didn't want to have to go through that again, especially when at that
Hmm.
time I was the breadwinner. So,
Okay.
my car was the one who broke down. And it's like I can't get to
Mm.
work, or we're trying to carpool or share a vehicle. And that's just
Hmm.
taxing on everybody. And so that's when
Yeah.
we drew a line in the sand and said, no more. We really just have to get this thing together. And now that we had reason to ensure that we put our finances on the top burner instead of
Mhm.
secondary.
What is your big advice for people? A lot of people want the steps, like give me the 10-step plan, the 3-step plan, the 2-step plan, however many steps there are. They just want you to tell them, what do I need to do exactly? Show me what I need to do. There's
Yeah.
so many different plans out there and ways, if you will, that
Mhm.
people talk about how to get out of debt. What is your kind of tried and tested rule, if you will, or best practice plan, if you will?
Right. So I would say the very first thing is to have a reality check, and that is to
Mm.
add up all of your expenses for 1 month and to see where your money went. Don't miss a single expense. So you need to know how much you spend on groceries, how much on dining out, how much on clothing, how much on the children, how much, all of this added up, not just bills, not just debts, but your discretionary spending. And
Right.
that is a full picture of where your money went, because a lot of people cannot answer these questions. A lot of people have no idea how much they're spending in these areas, and if you were to ask them, they are vastly underestimating these numbers. And so you have to face the facts and have this reality check, I think is step one. And then you can actually do something about that. Then you can start making decisions on what you really want to see. I think a lot of times we miss out on the whole notion of goal setting. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's bigger than just a New Year's resolution. It's bigger than
Hmm.
just saying, I want to get out of debt. You have to get to the why. What is this going to transform? How is this going to change your life? And when we did this exercise and I saw that we were spending $1,200 a month on all of our payments between student loans, credit cards, and car notes,
Hmm.
I said, this is crazy. What's
Yeah.
possible with $1,200 a month? That was exciting to me, that
Hmm.
that could be freed up. And that was the motivation that we needed in order to actually then do a budget. So I would say the
Yeah.
reality check, do some real goal
Hmm.
setting with your big why, and then create a budget that will help you get there. And that
Nice.
just means shrinking some of the expenses that are not as necessary or doesn't you don't need to spend as much on
Hmm.
in order to fund the goals that are really important to you.
When you work with couples or singles or whoever, when you work with people, what is the number one expense you think that we are overspending on that that's really more discretionary, that's not necessarily a need?
We justify our dining out, period.
Ooh,
So food
yes.
is a necessity. Dining
You see,
out is not.
but let me ask you, I've got a lot of friends who live in New York City, and every time we go and we visit people, we go out to eat to the point where most of them are like, we eat out every night. Because they're great restaurants in New York City, and a new place just opened up down the street, or I just heard about this place in Harlem. We've got to go. And so every time we talk to them, they're like, oh my God, we just went out to this great restaurant. We got to go when you come back in town. That's how they live. New
Yeah,
Yorkers will tell you, we don't need a cook. What do I need a kitchen for?
yeah,
What do I need a kitchen for? I can
yeah.
just go out to dinner. But you're saying that that is one of those expenses that maybe, it's not a need. It's a need to eat, but you might need to start cooking a little bit more at home, right?
Well, and I think it's also unrealistic to bring
Hmm.
that category completely down to 0, right? So
Okay.
no
Yeah,
one is
that's
going
true.
to never dine out. That's not realistic.
Hmm.
However, and I also think where you live is, how you live life
It's
is an
relevant.
important
Hmm.
factor, right?
Hmm.
The challenge I have is when people spend money on groceries with great intentions, and then that goes to waste because they are dining out
Yeah.
too, right? So we do
Hmm.
need to look at this with a balanced approach. The other thing, I just people need to understand when you're dining out, you're always spending more. Depending on where you go. If you're quick
It's
service,
true.
fast food, okay, you might be spending 5 times as much as if you had that same thing at home. If you
Hmm.
are dining out and you're sit down and you're having that glass of wine or dessert with it, you could be
It adds
multiple
up.
10, 20, 30 times what that
Hmm.
same meal would cost at home. So I'm not
Yeah.
advocating slash and burn, let's just put it all away. But I am saying take account of these things and understand that every day dining out or every day having that
Hmm.
Starbucks or every day, doing these things, these habits,
Hmm.
are costing us, right? And so
Yeah.
and also it's for a season. This is the other
It's
thing
for a
that
season.
it
Yes.
yeah, so that you can get closer to your goal. It's not forever that you're saying no. It simply is for a season. And if we can get that mindset, then it is giving up something good for something better that you want
Hmm.
so that
Hmm.
later on you can enjoy a little bit more fully.
Yeah, use that going out as a, celebration. You got the job promotion, or you did something well at your job, or your kids had a great game, or whatever it is. Use
Mhm.
it as a celebration, like once a month, maybe. I mean, or maybe even 2 times a month. But as you mentioned, it's really about moderation. Moderation really is the key to everything,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to our money. What is, if you were to give us kind of like the pie, how much of that pie, percentage wise, should we be spending for, discretionary funds for our wants versus, our needs, food, shelter, clothing,
Yeah.
gas, car? What should that pie look like?
That's a really good question. So if
Hopefully I didn't make you dizzy doing this.
no, 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 but there are many different things. So
Mhm.
um I'm gonna make this simple as possible.
Okay.
So housing, just in terms of the mortgage or your rent payment and the things that are associated with that. So like the insurance and the real estate taxes, all that, should be
Mhm.
25 to 35% of that pie, let's say.
Okay.
Right.
Hmm.
So we do not, so if it's more than that, there could be this chance that you're house poor. And we don't want to run into that scenario
Right.
because that takes dollars away from something else. And so housing is
Hmm.
important. And so it is a
Hmm.
big portion of that pie, but it doesn't have to be everything. Um, I think a lot of people don't realize how much they're spending on utilities because you have to have utilities.
Mm.
You've got to take care of
Right.
everything. Yeah. So that very well could be 10%. But when we're talking about and food, Lordy.
I know. That's a huge bill.
It is, and
Hmm.
the more money you make, when we're looking at this percentage, when we're talking about food, it's not just spending more money on food, it is potentially quality. And that's the honest truth. The more money you
Mm,
make, the more often you can have steak, even if it is at home. And that's the truth. So, but I would say a sweet spot is somewhere around 10%. And this is of your
10%.
take home pay. And then when
Hmm.
we're looking at transportation, and this is insurance, and this is gas, and this is the vehicle itself, and maintenance, and that kind of thing. I mean, honestly, it's really good to stay beneath that 15%.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
when we're looking at this pie, I mean, obviously these numbers will just adjust here and there,
Right.
but when you don't have as much in, let's say, transportation, or if you decide that you're gonna be dining in more often, and so that piece can come down to 8% or what have you, or your housing itself is 25%, maybe that means,
Hmm.
you can do more of the dining out. But the fun money and the
Mm.
personal care, because we do have personal care, all of these things.
Oh, yeah. Especially for women, we're always about that hair and the nails and all of
Yes,
that.
yes,
Hmm.
those things are in there too, but see, when we have debt, it takes away from all of that,
Yeah.
right? So the debt portion, if your debt is equal, let's say, and a lot of times for a lot of people, your debt could be very well be equal to how much you're spending on a vehicle, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
in terms of the total amount here. So 15% is not uncommon, 15% for vehicle plus other debts. And
Hmm.
and you getting out of debt means that you actually have more for the rest of that pie. And
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
we're trying to protect. We're trying to protect your income and the ability to do whatever it is that you want with those funds. And so I think you can move the needle here and there. And that's why sometimes when people have too much in one area or another,
Hmm.
it makes it a little bit more, you can understand why certain changes are necessary. And that's what gets me
Yeah.
excited is they can visually see that. So
You can see that.
um
Yeah.
yeah, if we're spending, 20% on entertainment, I mean, these are red flags, right? And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
these are things to kind of consider.
Here's one thing that we consider, and I'm just being transparent. You know, in entertainment, in media, I mean, I have to have a television, and I have to have all of the cable channels because I need to watch everything, right?
Yes.
And I just realized, I'm like, why are we spending literally, it was like 300, over $300 a month. And
Yeah.
I know some people might say, well, that's pretty cheap. And I'm thinking, no, it's just television. And I realized after a certain point that I really wasn't watching everything, all of the channels that I thought I needed. I was
Yes.
really only watching like two or three. And so we had to we had to cut it off. And we ended up doing something else that is, I won't say because I mean, unless you want to come on as an advertiser, don't do it. But we ended up going with a service that now has literally slashed it in half, and
Awesome.
we still have access to everything for the most part that we watch. With all of the other, I guess, apps, I'm technologically kind of illiterate sometimes, but I'm still trying to understand how this all works.
Yeah.
But it's some kind of new, it's not cable, but it's some kind of new program where it's underground wires or something like that, and then
Mhm.
you now have the apps because so many companies are using streaming services
That's
now,
right.
and we realized we were like, we're really only watching like CNN and
Yeah.
MSNBC or something like that, and then Netflix and very little of the traditional networks.
Yeah.
So we went with that, and we literally slashed it more than half actually.
Yeah, and if you're paying attention to the details, you can do that. I also tell people, just as a aside, we're at
Hmm.
the top of the year, and a lot of people are looking to save money.
Right.
I would look at, like you say, your what are you doing for entertainment and
Hmm.
your subscription services, and just do an inventory if this
Yes.
is something that you need. But also
Hmm.
shop your insurances.
That's
Shop
good.
shop the other things that are on your budget. When you see that these things coming out of your account, maybe
Hmm.
it's time to go get a better deal. We are right now about to shop our auto insurance and make certain that we are getting the best price available, because as it creeps up, sometimes we don't even pay attention that somebody else could be giving us a better deal. So
Yeah.
it's a good time to shop some of the services that you have. And there's a lot of different things that we can shop there. I mean,
Yes.
and it's just getting a quote or having a conversation, and it just takes a little bit of your time. But if you're saving hundreds of dollars or even thousands per year, that's
Mhm.
fantastic. Let's do it.
But speaking of conversation and communication, say you are shopping around for insurance and you've been with this person for, I don't know, 20 years. They've done you right. You love them. You're now kind of friends. You have a little relationship. You talk to each other on Facebook, so on and so forth. And you just do what, guess what? Erica told me to shop around. So I did. And guess what, honey? I found we could save maybe $30 a month, and over time that adds up. Let's go ahead and make a change. How do you have that conversation with your insurance person and
Yeah,
say, you know what, we like you, we love you, but we need to go somewhere else? Is
yeah.
it likely that they will say, okay, what did someone else give you? Let's match that because we want to keep you. Does
They
that typically happen?
It does happen, and if they
Mhm.
have bandwidth, they will try and keep you as, a current customer. Because here's the deal, it costs them more to replace you. Right? So this
Mm,
goes for
mhm,
when you're at work too, and you are a valuable employee, and other companies are trying to come get you. I
mhm,
mean, you can have that conversation, and if they're going for 10%, they will actually pay you 10% more. You can come back and say, "Hey, these guys want me." This goes for all of the different services that you have inside your house, and potentially the income
mhm.
that you are bringing into the home. And so, yes,
Right.
but not every time. And the other thing is, these are facts, right? So I think we make it
Mhm.
emotional when we have developed a relationship and all of that.
Yeah,
But if the fact is that you're looking to save money and you have found a service that is going to be less expensive, it's
it is
fact.
what it is.
Right? And
Mhm,
so I know
mhm,
people say it's business, not personal, and I understand the concept, but I will tell you that when we're talking facts, facts don't lie. And so,
mhm,
you've got this quote in front of you, and that it's just important for you to be able to say, "Hey, I have this," and we've done that for services around the home and things like that,
mhm,
where we
mhm,
actually had a physical invoice, or basically an estimate of work to be done, and
mhm,
they said, "You know what? We might not be able to get that close, but here's what we can do." And we were like, "All right, we're
mm.
gonna work with you anyway." So it always helps to have more
Yeah.
than one quote, if you will, and that will save you money all day long.
We talk about a rainy day fund. I remember my mom and dad saying that all the time growing up. You got to make sure you have a rainy day fund. Make sure you're stashing enough money away just in case for those incidentals. Maybe it's the car that breaks down, or maybe it's the washer that breaks down, or the dryer, and you need that extra because you're not. No one is budgeting like, oh, my washer and dryer will break down in about a year, so I'm going to go ahead and budget for that. Like, we're
Mm,
not budgeting for that.
no.
But for those kinds of incidents, what does that look like? How much money should we be setting aside per month, per paycheck to make sure that we have that rainy day fund funded very well?
Yeah, so actually I look at it more as a big bucket,
Oh,
and you're
okay.
going towards the bucket.
What's
So
wrong? Wait a minute. What's wrong with rainy day?
no, 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 no. Yes, it is a rainy
I'm
day,
teasing.
or it's a snowy day, like what we
Oh,
have
it's
going
snowy
on
day.
right now.
Right. That's why I
But
can't stand Indiana for the snow.
but I think the goal is not about how much per month or paycheck. It's more about getting to filling that bucket with what you need. So when people do a
Okay.
budget and they know how much their regular expenses are for housing, utilities,
Hmm.
food, um, the basic necessities, and they have this number per month,
Hmm.
right? And so let's
Hmm.
just say it's $5,000, right? So it takes $5,000 to run your household, not a whole lot of extras. We're just saying minimum, this is what it takes. The
Right.
bucket that I believe you should be filling is 3 to 6 times that, right? So it's
Oh,
either
wow.
between 15 and $30,000. Now,
Hmm.
if you're out of debt, that's so much easier, right?
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
and if you've reduced some of your expenses and you've found ways to find 100 or $200, now we're
Hmm.
talking, this is something we can go after, right? But that's
Right.
what looking at your budget will do. It'll help you to see, okay, I can actually put 5,000, I mean $500 towards
Hmm.
this, you know.
Hmm.
And then the other thing is, even if that goal seems big for some folks, what I would say
Yeah.
is make sure that you're getting out of the paycheck to paycheck living by at least getting your paycheck, getting up to the paycheck as a good goal, right?
Okay.
And so that you actually have a paycheck set aside. That's a little micro goal for the bigger goal of having a fully funded emergency fund. And then track your progress. All right, I got 1 month in there. Awesome. Now I got 3. And let me see how that feels. Do I
Mhm.
need more? I mean, I think business owners
Yeah.
who are self-employed, they probably need that more, like that 6 months or more. People who have W-2 and are working corporate could easily get away with 3 to 4 months. It just kind of depends on your family situation. If kids are involved, you might
Mhm.
need a little more. And it's also your comfort level. But I think that is a good window to
Mhm.
make sure that people are getting towards. And your budget is going to tell each individual person what they're capable of putting towards that
I
big
love it.
picture goal.
I love it. When you talked about employment, a lot of folks who are working, who are kind of in that corporate structure, they have an employer and you're able to give money to your 401k plans.
Mhm.
What is your advice in terms of how much that should be? Is there a specific number? Is there a sweet spot? Or is it based on your budget, based on your needs? And should you change it from time to time based on, at some point, maybe you've paid a lot of bills off, if you will, and now
Mhm.
you're at a point where you have more cash. So guess what? Let me put a little bit more money away.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, first of all, I always say get your free money. So if the company is
Mm,
matching any dollars, get your free money as long as you can afford to do up to the 6% or whatever it is. I mean, all the companies have different amounts that they will actually match, but get the free money because this is 100% return on that investment to start off with, even
absolutely.
before you get any
Hmm.
returns. So start there. The other thing is, yes, just what you said, when you are out of debt or you freed up some more cash, let's increase that.
Hmm.
I usually say let's get up to, like, each year when you get your raises and you're paying down, you're paying off debt and the debt's gone, then you can get up to like 15%. Now that's ideal. And at some
Nice.
point, if you can max it out, that is the greatest way for you to ensure that you're
Hmm.
going to have enough set aside for the future. But the other thing is, a good financial planner can help anybody let them know what the number is that they need when they retire. And at your
Love it.
current savings rate, if it's
Hmm.
300 bucks a month or 500 bucks a month, is it going to get you and keep you on track for that number? I think retirement is a number, it's not a
Hmm.
date. It actually is
Yes.
an amount of a nest egg that you have so that you can live
Hmm.
without having to work. And
Mm.
a good financial planner will be able to help you see what that actual number is and if you're on track. And if not on track, what is it gonna take for you to get there? And by that is how much more money you need to put in it. But I would start with the matching contribution, get up to,
Okay.
over time, over the course of some years, get up to that 15%. And if you can, of course, max it out, which is, I think for
Mhm.
2024, it's 27,500 or something, like 27,500. So that's a big amount for lots of
Just a big
folks.
amount.
But
Yeah.
but when you get to the place where you have no debt and you've got an emergency fund and you have extra
Mm.
dollars and you're,
Mhm.
approaching retirement, that might be something that you are able to do. And then beyond that, you just want to make certain that you are on track for your
Mhm.
retirement
Mhm.
amount, right?
What was that you said again? You said retirement is not a date, it's a number, right?
Yes,
I
yes.
love that. Just explain that one
Mhm.
more time for the people in the back room who might not have heard.
Well, I'll go a little deeper. So we always
Okay.
think that we could, one, you can't access your 401k dollars until you're 59 and a half, right?
Mhm. Right.
So you can't, or you'll take a penalty and you'll pay more
Mhm.
in taxes than you need to. So let's not do that. Let's wait till at least 59 and a half. But if you want to retire, so some people work for a certain amount of time and then they want to just step
Mhm.
away from working and they know that Medicare kicks in at 65 and you can get Social Security at
Mhm.
66 and all of these things. And so we're
Right.
always looking at an age or a date,
Mm.
right? It's a different date for each person based on their age, right? And so it's we're always see it as a date, but even
It's
if you
true.
retire at
Mhm.
that age, do you
Mhm.
know if that nest egg will support you? So your
Yes.
nest egg needs to have a number attached to it so that you can actually see, yes, I'm on track. And when I do hit
Mhm.
this age, I will also have the finances needed in addition to that because Social Security is
Yes.
not going to take care of us. Not 100%.
It may not even be around
It may not
when
even be
you're
around for some
ready
folks.
to access it.
That's
Mhm.
right. That's right. So,
Oh, gosh.
yeah.
What about, here's the notion that for people who are working and they may not be close to retirement, you talked about, having that slush fund, that rainy day fund, that big fund. What did you call it? What did you
Oh, the
call it
big
again?
bucket, just a
The
big
big,
the
yeah,
savings
the
bucket. Mhm.
savings bucket. Yeah, your big bucket fund. What about a fund for those expenses, those unknowns, meaning loss of job,
Yeah.
you've been fired, or you decided to walk away for whatever reason?
Mhm.
Should there be a separate fund outside of that big bucket fund, slush fund, rainy day fund?
That's a good question. Actually, the big bucket should represent the worst calamity that's possible for your finances, which is job
Ooh,
for your job
wow.
the job loss, right? So we're not, and for most people, when the income goes away, um, period, you need those dollars. And so that's why it is represented in months that you can take care of your
Mhm.
finances, so that you can take care of your bills. So for 3 to 6 months, you can take care of it and be looking for a job. Um, the other thing that I think, so if we back into this a little bit deeper, we can look at
Mhm.
the way that you live life. So your medical expenses, how often you do the repairs on your vehicle, the
Mhm.
non-monthly expenses or your travel. So these are also things that you can add up. And it's a great time to look at the previous year and see how much you spent on some of those, what you might want to deem, they're extra on top of life. Like they just
Right.
happen. You're going to have to take care of the
Mhm.
tires. You're going to have to make sure that the kids have this. So you look at these
Mhm.
extras and you say, do I need to boost this
Mm.
emergency
Mhm.
fund? And sometimes it's in a
Mhm.
different account. I think travel should be in a different account. I think the holidays ought to be in a different account. Maybe some car repairs if you have a
Mhm.
vehicle that is in need of that on an annual basis. Um,
Mhm.
these are things that you might wanna just separate from that big picture, bucket
Yeah.
fund, because you know that you're gonna be dipping into that every single year. That emergency fund, you might not touch it unless something
Mhm.
big happens. But
Right.
when we're talking about everyday life and things like that, you might wanna keep that separate and closer by.
I love that. When people decide to walk away from a job, with this, my silence is not for sale, we're obviously talking about, workplace bullying, workplace abuse. And sometimes people will continue to work and navigate through those environments because they love their job and they simply don't want to leave. And they're hoping that, and possibly, I'm sure, praying that it will change.
Yeah.
But say it doesn't change and that person is at the end of their ropes. And I don't know who I would be talking about, but that person is at the end of their ropes and they say, you know what, I got to walk out. But
Mhm,
there's no plan necessarily in place because it just happened. That
mhm.
truly is an emergency. And I wonder, I'm sure there are a lot of people who I talk to now who are saying, I can't leave my job. I have to
Yeah.
stay. But my health is suffering. My physical health is suffering. My mental health is suffering. My family is suffering.
Mm.
And they have to stay because they have to make money. That's their only source of income, whether you're married or single, whatever the case may be. That's your livelihood. And so
Sure.
our livelihood is tied to our emotional connection to our jobs. And whether or not you stay, it's based on the bag every 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the challenge that we have right now, and this is a real reason for people to get their finances in order so that they actually free up
Mhm.
some options for themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the time where it's really important for people to make decisions for their future, but also for, like you say, for their health. And so it's not, this is why it would make a whole lot of sense to transform the way that you're looking at money and the way that you're spending money, so that you can shrink those expenses for a season, create that um peace out fund. You know what
I
I
like
mean?
that.
Because
Deuces. My
that
juice is fun.
that's right.
I'm out.
Because I mean, if that's what's really happening. The other thing though, honestly, I really believe for most people, there might be some things that we can shift. And
Okay.
sometimes it is moving to a city that is a little less expensive, downgrading on the home, those kinds of things. Let's make some,
Mm-hmm.
if it's that important, then
Mm-hmm.
there may be some bigger choices to make. Selling a vehicle, just looking at what you currently have differently, and then
Yeah.
leaving and maybe taking on a job that takes up, $1,000 or $2,000 a month, which is the difference, for peace of mind.
We continue our conversation next week with the do's and don'ts of finances when leaving your job.